Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for joining us today to another conversation with one of the signatories of Glasgow Declaration. This conversation is part of a series of case studies which have been developed featuring the efforts of several signatories of Glasgow Declaration to advance the climate action with the emphasis on their approach towards measurement and impacts on decarbonization and regeneration. These conversations are actually being held to complement the overview of methodologies and tools to measure greenhouse gas emissions, which was released in March 2023 at ITB Berlin. And later in the chat, I will share the link with you, and please feel free to review and get back to us. Today, we are going to talk to the long run and to learn about their journey to accelerate their climate action. I would like to thank Jeremy Smith, who helped us to bring these cases together. And without any further ado, I would like to give the floor to Jeremy to start the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roxana, and it's wonderful to see so many people joining us this morning. I'm here with Kathrin Zscheigner. I'm sorry, Anne, I'm not good on the pronunciation of German surnames, but I'm here with Kathrin from the Long Run. We've spoken many times, and it's always a privilege and opportunity to learn from you what's going on with the Long Run's work. But because I do know, I would rather ask you to tell the story a bit. So before we get talking really about climate action, could you, first of all, give me the correct pronunciation of your surname, and secondly, tell me and everyone what it is the Long Run does.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, and thank you everyone for joining and listening a little bit more about what we do with our members. So the pronunciation is Kathrin Zscheigner, but as always, it's just Anne. Please, Anne is totally fine. I respond to a lot of things having a complicated name like that. So when it comes to the Long Run was founded in 2009. And it is very much a global community of committed people that want to drive sustainability through their nature-based properties. And the goal really of the Long Run is to improve and secure the integrity of ecosystems and make sure that our businesses have a really positive impact on nature, people, and cultures. And the members at the moment span thinly across the whole world. So anything from Patagonia to Hawaii to New Zealand to Kenya, where I am based, and we protect roughly about 23 million acres and support about 1 million people and work with them.
Okay, that's fairly extensive. Now, you've also the Long Run has been involved in climate action for a long time. I mean, when Tourism Declares a Climate Emergency launched in 2020, you were one of the founder 14 signatories to that. You were a founder signatory to the Glasgow Declaration at COP26. And there's always been this connection, it seems, of the work you do to protect wild lands and biodiversity, but also bringing it in with a connection to work on the climate crisis. Could you just share with us how the Long Run's work, supporting your members, working on climate action, how's that developed over the years?
Well, the Long Run, the key thing what we do is we promote a holistic approach to sustainability. So for us, climate is part of one of the aspects that we are encouraging our members to understand, to explore, to minimize their impact. So we always use the framework of what we call the 4 Cs of conservation, community, cultures, and commerce to really enable people to integrate sustainability into the core of their business, but look at it in all the different aspects of what they're doing. Because we can't just limit our work on carbon specific. It has to be broader than that, because the climate and the biodiversity crisis are also so closely linked. All of these aspects are important. If we have happy, healthy people, if we have really secure conservation areas, then climate will also benefit. So for us, all of these things are interlinked, and the key is for us to bring this global community of people together to learn and exchange, so that the best practice that people have created in Costa Rica can be shared with people in South Africa, or vice versa, because there's so many commonalities in the challenges that we face with addressing anything related to climate and otherwise in our sustainability journeys. But we need to not reinvent the wheel. So for us, it's building on our experience, making sure we connect people and to grow together.
Okay, I'd like to come back to some of that richer connection that you talk about, but first of all, because the focus of this particular conversation and the focus of the work that it supports has been around work that's been done through the UNWTO, looking at supporting anyone, whether they sign the Glasgow Declaration or not, supporting people to measure their emissions towards working forward on decarbonising and climate action. So could you, what do you do as the long run, as a membership organisation, supporting your many members measuring their emissions?
Yeah, so it's been a long journey for us, I have to admit. We thought this is a very easy thing to crack. It's not. So the members of the long run really vary in scale and size and focus, and they're in different ecosystem and in different parts of their journey. So some may have only just started, and some of maybe have founded the business based on sustainability. So they measure and monitor things for a long time. So I would say probably now about 8 years, we've been trying to get this amazing information from our members about their impact when it comes to carbon and other ways, and to tease it out. We've developed online tools, we have and tracking systems for it. We've eventually realized that having tailor-made systems is quite tricky because of the different size of operations that people have, the different focus people have, and we're also in the value chain they're at. And then eventually created an Excel-based spreadsheet to make it really easy for people. Because I think the key is those that are already along the line, it's very easy to use any tool to communicate it, but we don't want them to duplicate their work either, because they should be focusing on what they're doing. But it's those that are really at the early stages where it has to be very simple, it has to be super user-friendly, and it has to speak their language. So we've tried to use the Excel-based spreadsheets, which worked well, but ultimately we realized that we really need a technology and online platform to collect it more accurately. In addition to just the tracking itself, I think the key thing that we've always been doing is having discussions. We host every 2 weeks webinars with our members, and some of them will focus on climate, but it's understanding what does scope for us, where do I start, to how can I reduce my energy consumption. So very small and very practical measures are amongst those things that we encourage people to engage. So even if they're not ready to measure or they don't have the capacity to monitor, at least they can learn about it, they engage their team in it and progress that way.
So, I mean, it is training very much sort of at the forefront of what you see as a membership organization, training, education, development that you offer your members.
I think, yeah, it is. I think this connectivity between people, I think, is key. Again, I feel like everybody has some piece of the puzzle. Like somebody will have figured out which technology to use to measure your water. Why do we need to reinvent the wheel and spend that time? So having that opportunity to have that cross-pollination across continents and different business is hugely valuable, because sustainability is not a competitive space. So people are very happy to share and to learn, and having that opportunity for experts to come in to explain what they do and how can things be done better, not just by throwing money at it, but just making very small tweaks, is really essential. So when it comes to training, so for us, the webinars are really helpful and people really appreciate them because it's an easy way for them to improve. And then we've also developed 2 more extensive trainings, one on resource efficiency, at this time only focusing on water and energy. And then the second one is on strategic sustainability planning, just to help people understand how can they integrate it into their business and make it the core rather than that add-on.
And these, I mean, very often when organizations or membership organizations, these sort of trainings become benefits of paying your subscription fee or whatever it might be. But am I right that these are, anyone listening today, whether they're a member of the long run or not, can access a fair part of these anyway? Yes,
so all of those trainings, so both trainings, they're freely accessible, they're open source. We developed them with very kind funding through GIZ and with the support of Preferred by Nature, and they are openly accessible because also we can't also just have the remit of looking at our members and only supporting them. We have also responsibility to the wider tourism industry. So for us to have that opportunity to develop some resources whether that is a guide of freely accessible resources that everybody can use, or our training, then that is what we should do. The key is the online training is a self-guided training. What we offer to our members is then the guided way, so that we can really assist with them in a tailored approach to connect their current project activities with their long-term aspirations, making sure that they have that roadmap to integrate it, because integrating sustainability is not just going to happen overnight.
And you said there were trainings so far on water and energy efficiency. I mean, what, are there more on the way?
Yes, we want to develop more and are currently looking for the resources. So for us, a big one is staff empowerment, making sure we don't leave anyone behind. There is a lot of different aspects we've been looking at, communicating sustainability. How can we effectively and correctly do that without stepping into any of the pitfalls? Some of these things have really come up as something that's really core to our members, and that we know from the wider tourism industry that people are struggling with. And it's not that we are not doing it, but it's just trying to encourage them to look at it in different ways, see how we can, just support that process. And sometimes it's just that little training that can tip the scales and create some action.
Okay, so as well as developing various trainings and working with partners to do this and then provide them to your members and to the wider tourism ecosystem, you have also are very involved in the development of tools that you've developed. You mentioned simple Excel spreadsheets, but there are more that you either are involved in developing for your members or more widely. I mean, when it comes to climate measurement, or in fact more broadly for sustainability measurement, I'm thinking particularly of the tool Weaver that you've been involved in from the beginning, but there are others, I believe. I mean, I'd love to know more and share with people listening, what are you using, or your members using, to actually measure these emissions, and how can you help people?
Yeah, so for us, what I said earlier is, like, we've had quite a journey when it comes to measurement. And in the end, we were one of the founding partners of Viva. So we helped create a bedrock on which Viva was built. And Viva is really that technology, what we personally have always been dreaming out and hoping for, that somebody will run with it, to help create a really user-friendly way to break down sustainability and to take everybody on that journey and demonstrate that, if we know our impact, we can communicate it better, we can track it better, and we can really embed sustainability and we can improve. So with Viva, we've been working for a few years at the beginning, and Viva then endorsed the 4 Cs and used those to develop their 18 parameters that one can see now on the Viva platform. And for the long run, we've opted at Viva being our strategic partner to encourage people and help them track and monitor. So we work very closely with Viva and our members to ensure that we get that data, so we can demonstrate to the world the amazing power that tourism has to drive change.
And that's obviously the ambition that we all have, those of us who work and are passionate about this industry, but is it too early to say that you're able to demonstrate some of those impacts, or is it?
Yeah, we've always measured some impact. So we know, it's like what I said at the beginning, it's 23 million acres. We know we are touching the lives of 1 million people. This many species are protected. But in order to really look into a more of a holistic impact that tourism can have, you really need a sophisticated tool, a measuring platform that can really go into the details. Because also for us to better support members about the progress that they've made with reducing their carbon footprint, for example, the key really is for us to have the platform that is unique across the community, and then to demonstrate as a community, we have reduced our carbon footprint by X. That may not attribute to the long run, but everybody doing their own measures, and we are able to communicate and advocate that to the world, that it can be done. So if everybody takes one step, it is possible.
Okay. And some of your members have themselves also been doing some really interesting work around climate measurement, quantifying the figures, and in many ways connecting it not only to those sort of numerical emissions reductions, but some of the work that you touched on at the beginning that is very much around regeneration, nature-based solutions, the positive impact we can have. Could you share some stories about some of your members and what they're doing?
So I think, I think two examples that come to mind and which we've also looked into the case study is Grootbos Private Nature Reserve in South Africa, because they have been externally certified as being carbon negative in 2018. They, for example, they've always started, and like many years before, of just understanding their carbon footprint. Where does it come from? What is really attributing to the biggest contributor to my footprint, whether that it is energy, waste, water, across the board. And they've really understood that it's not just that, though. We also need to look into the restoration efforts that they're doing in the Cape Floristic region in Southern Africa, and the work that they're doing to maintain the land. For example, it's like normally it's an area that is very prone for wildfires, and they're very intense, which means actually really negatively impacting both the biodiversity of this unique biome, but at the same time destroying some of the soil carbon that's retained within the ground. So for them, as part of the wider conservation efforts, they always do controlled burnings to make sure it's a low intensity, which means that the carbon below ground is protected, it's enhanced, that there's not as much leaf loss, etc. But at the same time, it's hugely benefiting the biodiversity of the area. So it's good for carbon and it is good for biodiversity. And at the same time, it also goes beyond carbon, is because they also do a lot of work related to employing of people, the education, the training, the support, enterprise development, or otherwise. And the key is that they have also been certified for all of those efforts. And I think it is a huge thing that we can't just look at carbon in its isolation. And the other example would be Tahi from New Zealand with the Biodiversity Value Index, because again, Susan and her team always educate about, and we agree, it's like, we can't just look at carbon, we have to go beyond carbon. The carbon and biodiversity crisis, they are linked, and we need to make sure that we address them. So what they really look into is like that not every tree is designed to equal. Like every tree will sequester different amounts of carbon, but it should be as a result just support pine tree plantations, just because they have a huge carbon stock in the first 5 or 10 years, and then it just plateaus. Is that what we should be focusing on? Or should we rather look at restoration and reforestation programs that take biodiversity into consideration, i.e. planting trees and species that both benefit the biodiversity, sequester carbon to begin with, but support the biome to create that carbon sequestration that way outgrows any pine tree plantations in 10 or 15 years. So actually having a much bigger carbon sequestration potential than those monocultures that are so often included in those plantations at the moment.
That actually leads me really nicely. We're going to turn in a second to ask, seeing if anyone from the audience has any questions. But there's one question been written in the chat from one of the audience called Ellison, which very much connects with what you're just saying here, and I think ties in very nicely to the work of the Long Run and the work that Weaver do, which he says, Ellison says, CO2 measurement is complex, but what about the social components of sustainability? How to even begin to measure these other aspects? And I think, with the work of the 4 Cs through the Long Run, or the 360 approach of Weaver, from the beginning, this is baked in, isn't it? That we can't have this tunnel vision on carbon. We have to see it as a connecting issue. So I'd love to know what you have to say.
So for us, it's really, that's why we've always looked at sustainability through these 4 lenses. I think the key that we also realized is everything obviously is interconnected. We can't have healthy and thriving ecosystems without happy people, healthy people, thriving people that are surrounding them or that are working for the businesses. Everything we do is interlinked. It is important to look at each aspect individually, to give it its own moment in time, to look at the challenges and the opportunities. What are things we can expand from an impact perspective, and what are things we should be cautious about or we should explore and we've not thought about. When it comes to the actual measurement of social impact, there's lots of different ways. It can be, if you want to break it down to numerical thing, is like the number of beneficiaries that we are supporting through specific projects, is the number of events hosted. It is, you know, it can be in certain aspects, it can be broken down to numerical information, but often it is also about the storytelling. It's about the longevity of projects. How are we setting up projects that are sustainable so that they don't just rely on a tourism business or anybody to support those projects, so to make sure that the women group we are supporting to weave baskets or to do pottery, that they can also stand on their own 2 feet. So some things we'll be able to monitor numerically, and other things it's connecting the dots and telling the story.
Thank you. If any, it's wonderful to see so many participants here listening, and I know there will be many more people who will be listening to it or watching it on the recording that will be available through the UNWTO. Does anyone have any questions for Anne that they either would like to unmute themselves and ask or put into the chat? Now is very much an opportunity to learn from her expertise. So I'll give everyone a second or so.
Anne, hello, it's Marcus from Tiger Mountain.
Hi, Marcus.
Just want to say, I'm wondering if it's worth talking a bit about the flexibility of Weaver, because certainly from our experience, just starting up using it, it is an amazingly diverse and flexible tool. And they've even, you know, amended date calculations for us to accommodate different calendar systems.
Yeah, no, and I think that is the beautiful thing with Viva. So the members of the long run were part of the pilot group to help Viva to see like what kind of a system do we need? What are some of these unique properties every business has? And what Marcus was mentioning in their case is not everybody's calendar year will start on January 1st. Some will start in April, some will start in June, whatever it may be. But the team at Viva has been very kind and very flexible also to see how can they support each business with their unique properties. Also, it's like, I think with the other aspect of sustainability and carbon is like, you can be very easily overwhelmed. And as a result, be like, you're not quite sure where to start or what to do first. And Viva, as well as the long run, we always say is like, we just need to start somewhere. So in Viva's case, you'll be able to hide certain parameters that are currently just not on your radar, or we've just not started. So you don't feel like, oh, you know, of the 18 parameters, I'm only able to fill 1 and now I feel really bad. That's not the point. The point is, and the same with the long run, is to showcase and to discuss. There's so many things over time we will look at, we will discuss, we will explore. That doesn't mean you can and should be working on everything at the same time. We only have, everybody has limited financial and human resources. We have to focus, we have to prioritize. So both systems in a way, and both organizations are structured that way, that you can really look into making sure, let's start somewhere, let's get that right and understand that, and then let's expand our horizon. But making sure that we look at sustainability, not just as carbon, not just at scope 1, 2, and 3, but look at it beyond and look at all the social components, the cultural aspects, and conservation as well.
Thanks. A connecting question to that from Shivya Nath, who's from Climate Conscious Travel. Shivya is asking, does this include scope 3 and supply chain emissions, either through Weaver or yourselves? I mean, how does one grapple with that?
Well, scope 3 is definitely not an easy one. I know with Viva, they have certain aspects of scope 3 included already. I cannot tell you the extent of which, but I can ask Julie and Rosie, and I'm sure they'd be more than welcome to share or give you a demo. They are doing really good offers at the beginning where you can just sign up, and for 3 weeks, you can just test it, see what it's like for you. When it comes to the long run and scope 3 and supply chain, you will see that the members of the long run are not just properties. So it's not just like Marcus Place, but you know, a physical place on Earth where people have direct influence. But we are also working with people like Vicky, who is also on the call from Earth Changers, but also tour operators and otherwise, to really make sure that you are working across the supply chain. It's not as easy for DMCs, tour operators. They have often a very small direct impact, because it may only be an office, but the scope 3 is really where the impacts lies. So we need to also empower, and we are working with that with different means as well, as trying to empower tour operators to have some tools that they can share with their suppliers, making sure that they are also able to support them so we can drive that change across the value chain.
I mean, when it comes to scope 3, I mean, it seems one of the challenges is that there isn't consensus over what we're going to include in the scope 3 emissions. Certainly when you talk of the many different types of businesses you have there, does the long run have a sort of shopping list of scope 3 that this is what's included for you if you're a hotelier or consultancy?
I wish we had. To be honest, through Preferred by Nature, we have access to some experts that come to carbon aspects, and we have hosted webinars related to it. I think when it comes to tourism and carbon, there is increasingly getting some consensus as to where we should start and stop. Especially when it comes to flights, there's always the discussion, should we be including the flights of our clients, yes or no? What happens if they're going to multiple properties? Which part, like, where do I start? Where do I stop? And I think one of the trainings we would like to do is breaking down scope 3. Really making sure people understand the different aspects, and just providing, again, the opportunity to provide examples so that people can see different aspects have been addressed in different ways. There is not one size fits all, because our businesses all will vary so strongly about our influence, our scope, our projects that we are doing. So it has to be also flexible, but guidance is essential here.
Indeed, thank you. We're coming very much to the end. I just wanted to ask you sort of some final questions. I mean, you work with members across all different types, from sort of, global leaders to people starting out, all with the same shared commitments or mission, intentions. And there'll be people from different walks of life and stages here. Through working with all of them on climate action, regardless of what stage in their journey they're at, I mean, do you take some sort of learnings from how best to get involved, how best to get started?
I think for me, it's always when people ask me how best to get started, honestly, it's just start somewhere. As the beauty of having a community, whether it's the long run or your local hoteliers association, your local landowners association, your LATAs, your this and that, whatever it is I think you have an opportunity to learn from each other. For us, this learning, exchanging, inspiring each other is really takes center stage, because we believe by having the opportunity to tap into best practices on the ground, we can accelerate everybody's organization and their work. So if we are able to learn from the different people, then we can really see as to what is possible. And sometimes it's just having that opportunity to be like, what is possible? I didn't think I can do this, but I know from somebody else they've done it. So let me look in my case, what will that mean? That doesn't mean we have to replicate what Tahi did with the biodiversity value. That doesn't mean we have to replicate what Marcus did in Nepal, but it means we have an ideas how we can look at an issue or an aspect we are grappling with through a different lens, a different perspective, and then hopefully find a way to address it.
And thank you very much for that perfect way to conclude what we've been talking about today. I'm going to pass back to Roxana from the UNWTO to close today's session, and to thank everyone very much for joining. Thank you for your questions, and hope to see you all again soon. Thanks very much, Anne, and over to you, Roxana.
Thank you very much, Jeremy and Anne, and colleagues who have joined us today. It was really an interesting conversation and inspiring, and we really hope that this kind of stories and journey can bring us all closer and help us to accelerate climate action. I just shared in the chat the link to the next sessions and conversation we are conducting. Also, the recording of the previous ones are available. And under each page, you can get access to the case studies which have been developed, so you can learn more about them. And please feel free to reach out to us whenever you have a question and if you need any support. Wishing you a very nice day, and thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.